Today I'm actually going to give an update, but not on the market per se. I'm going to give an update on the Department of Justice, the DOJ decision on the commission separation between buyers and sellers. If you recall, earlier this spring, we were hearing about the Department of Justice and all the real estate companies coming together and settling a long dispute about how commissions are paid. So historically, the seller, the listing agent, that side was in charge of the commission for the buyer side. And you can go back in history for a really long time, and that's something that news today doesn't typically do, kind of reflect on how we got here. Back in the day, probably as early 70s, probably even mid 80s, most of listings were sold by the listing agent. So the commission was handled all through that side. Buyer agents weren't as common in the market until much later. I would probably say even maybe late 90s, early 2000s. I got in the business in 2004. It seemed like the buyer's agent market was taking off. I was an assistant or a real estate agent, and she was all listings. She barely handled any buyers, just a few. It was just listing driven, and a lot of times she would do what we call double ending, and she would sell both sides. Hey, I'm Michele from Compass. I forgot to announce who I am and what am I doing? I'm explaining real estate and what's happening here in Santa Cruz County. Anyway, so it was primarily all driven from the seller and the listing side. So the commissions were always bundled in to that equation, and the 6%, which used to be the norm, now it's 5% pretty much customarily here in Santa Cruz County. 2.5 each side. That the selling side listing agent would sell both sides and get that full commission. And then more and more, as buyers started getting a little bit more savvy and wanting to have their own representative, buyer agents really started to come into their own, right? Probably, I would say probably late 90s, early 2000s. It really got to be a thing. That's when I got in the business. I always wanted to sell real estate, by the way. I just never thought I was old enough. And I don't know why. I guess I just thought you had to be a certain age. But I've always loved real estate. I always wanted to own my own home. I always thought it was a big deal. So anyway, enough about me. So what we have is a commission kind of bundled all up into one. And you would go and work with a seller. I would go list a property. And I would say, okay, the commission is 5%. I'm going to give half of that to the buyer's agent, and I'm going to get half of that, or my brokerages and their brokerages. And that's how it is. And, 9 times out of 10, the seller would say, okay, sounds great. I realize it's going to cost me 5% to sell my house. Fine. Every once in a while, a seller would pop up and go, I don't want to pay the buyer's agent, but I want to pay you. In fact, I'll pay you even more. I just don't think I should have to pay the buyer's agent. They should have their own agent, and that they should pay their agent. And I always thought, well, weird, because it's always been this way. Well, they had a point. They did not want to pay the buyer's side. They really just didn't see what the value was in that. And I'd be like, well, to be in the multiple listing service, you have to put in the full commission that you're paying. And my companies that I had been working for would never allow me to put in even less commission. So that meant that if the seller wanted to pay less, I would have to take it out of my side, not out of the buyer's side, because the MLS kind of had a hold on everything. I'm not going to get into the MLS, but that's really, really where the bone of contention really was, is that sellers felt that they were being pressured to pay the buyer's agent. And if they didn't want to, they really didn't have a choice, because MLSs required a certain commission to be put in the MLS, or companies did. And the DOJ considered that basically collusion. So where are we at today? Well, I think it was August 17th is when the decision and the settlement actually came down. And they said, sellers, if you don't want to pay the buyer's agent, that's fine. You don't have to. We're taking it all away. No commissions can be advertised in the multiple listing service anymore. And it's not commissions anymore. Now it is concession. So when a seller says to their agent, their listing agent, I'm going to be paying you It could be commission, but it would be a concession to the buyer's agent. Now, what have I seen in the market? What is the reason even for this video is to give you an update of what I'm seeing since August. We are, on our way to mid-December, almost to the end of the year. I can tell you, I haven't seen anything really change except for the discussions. There's a lot more discussions about it, and I kind of feel like everybody's relieved. Like it's not this shadow payment that the buyer's agent gets anymore. It's all out in the open. Everybody knows how the buyer's agent is going to get paid if they're going to get paid, right? I had a seller pop up and say they didn't want to pay the buyer's side commission. Well, it got to be a little bit of a tussle because the buyer couldn't afford it. And we actually did work it out. But sellers, by and large, on all my transactions are still paying for the buyer agent services. And that's actually a concession from their sale. They're not paying the commission to the buyer. They're paying a concession that's actually in favor of the buyer, and the buyer then, of course, turns that over to their buyer agent. If this doesn't make sense to you or you need any more on this, please comment below and I will respond to you and help you understand more of it. Or if you had some experience, you had a question about, please let me know, comment below. And then while you're there, like, subscribe and share. I would appreciate that. And, hit the little subscribe button. That would be awesome. The reason I wanted to do this video is just to give you an idea of what I'm seeing. I've represented 3 buyers in the last 6 weeks, and all those buyer side, I have been given a concession by the selling listing side. I have been paid by them, not by the buyer. Even on lower, because the market has actually changed and it's gone down a bit. It's actually part seasonal, part the buyers are just kind of hanging out a little bit. So the market has kind of dipped a little bit. And with that, prices have gone down with it. But the sellers are still, I'm sure they're not happy about it, but they understand to sell. They're still needing to offer that concession for the buyer's side. What I recommend from all of this that I've just seen is if you're going to sell your property, budget the 5%. I know what you're thinking, but Michelle, you're just doing what they said to do. You're saying I have to pay the buyer side. I'm actually not saying you need to do that. But depending on where your home is going to come in at terms of price, it's probably better for you to understand the commission side that you may pay for your listing agent, and then the concession side for the buyer's agent, and just keep that 5% earmarked for that. You'll have a much better sale. You'll get more buyers, because if you're under a certain price point, I would probably say 1.5 million and under, you may have a buyer that's really stretching, and to take on that buyer agent concession is probably more than they can handle in order to buy your property. And because so many sellers are still offering that buyer side concession, they could go elsewhere to purchase the property. I mean, they could go to another home and then financially be able to make all their numbers work. Now, I'm not saying you have to like it. I'm not even saying as a seller you have to do it. I'm just saying it's more advantageous to see it that way and be prepared, because what I haven't seen is really any changes except for the conversations around it. I had a seller say that they didn't want to pay it. And I said, you are completely within your right not to pay it. And it's not advertised anywhere. And you're not obligated to pay it. You didn't sign anything saying absolutely you're going to pay it. But in order to get that buyer to buy your property, you may have to pay it. That's just, unfortunately, that's how it works. Don't shoot the messenger. And if you're a buyer, I would say call me, contact me, text me, email me, and ask me what I think, because it's really going to depend on the price point that you're in. And we are going to be moving into a discussion about haves and haves not, because unfortunately, I think we are still going to get in the situation where people who have a lot of money and can buy those expensive houses are going to be the same people who are not concerned about commissions, concessions, or how people are paid. They will just pay it. Whereas the people in different markets and lower price points may have more difficulty with that, buyers and sellers. And that, I think, is probably going to be a primer on the next lawsuit that we see in this. I don't think the battle on this is over and in any part, because there are buyers that are starting to feel that they've been coerced into either paying a buyer agent concession, maybe not, or they didn't feel that they should pay it. I mean, there's ugliness still abounds in this situation. If you have any more questions about this, please comment. I would love to hear what you got to say, and I'll see what I can do to help you in your situation. I have people call me all the time now since I've started this channel. I have people just call me to just get like advice. I'm like Dear Abby for real estate, but it would be Dear Michele. So if you like this content, please subscribe, share, comment below, and let me know what your concerns are. And just know that this is ever evolving. But honestly, the way that this came in, which was just kind of a slow roll of dividing up who's paying who, and then at the end of the day, it kind of just came back to the way it was before. We'll see some changes, of course, because real estate never stays the same. Every day in real estate is a completely different day. Catch me on my socials. Feel free to reach out, and I'd love to talk with you. Thanks. Bye.